What's up, guys? We are back with another review. We're back from LegionsCon. My voice has mostly returned. So we're going to take a look at the LegionsCon 2025 surprise drop. This is Koi. Now, he is a fishman, so he's very much themed to our new wave, and he is a central figure in that story, and he was surprisingly absent from the reveals, which kind of, made it seem like we were going to get him as our surprise drop. So he is the same idea as the Ninian from last year and the Valiant Knight before that. Now, he comes in, of course, standard Legions packaging, so you got him there in the window, you've got his bio on one spine, you've got the 4 Horsemen logo on the other, and then the back gives us that sort of teaser image that they used when they started sort of showcasing what we were going to get in Dawns of Discovery before LegionsCon. So yeah, let's do it. Let's pull them out and take a look. And here we go, out of the package, our LegionsCon 2025 surprise drop, Koi. So this guy is super involved in the story leading up to Dawns of Discovery, the new Legions wave. He's throughout some bios. He's very much an integral part of it. So it was kind of odd when this wave went up that he was not in it. And of course, there was kind of a glaring hole that we got a mermaid, but we didn't get a merman. So it makes a lot of sense that this guy is our surprise drop. He's also related in many ways to last year's surprise drop. So last year was the Ninian, so we got a snake man in the snake wave, we got a fish man in the fish wave, and this guy uses a retool, as best I can tell, of that body. So the Ninian and the Thraxian Scout share a lot of similarities, and this guy is a lot of Thraxian Scout parts, which means if you don't do Cosmic, you are in for some slight changes when it comes to articulation, kind of one big thing that we will start seeing going forward. So let's see what this guy can do, see how he moves around. We've got our head sculpt here, and I'm going to kind of point this out right away. This guy does have an odd ball peg at the neck. You can see it pretty much at all times, except when you're looking straight on. Fairly normal for this body, like Oleg Thygar is kind of the same way, the Ninian is the same way, the Thraxian Scout is kind of the same way, but it affords really good range. Like you can look up to the point where he's basically doing like a full-on swimming pose. That's kind of neat. And then you can also, it's kind of tight, but you can get him to go super far down, like way further than you probably need. Of course, we've got really good range though beyond that because of all that clearance. So like he's got a lot of attitude, side to side tilt, and then you've got your rotation there. So pretty good range despite that. Arms out at the shoulders, of course. They're gonna swivel. We've got our single jointed swiveling elbows. You've got swivel at the gauntlet, swivel and lateral hinge at these wrists. Now the torso is where things are a little bit different if you don't do Cosmic. So he has a diaphragm cut. And I will point out now that on all of mine, and I got a handful of these, they all started to rubber band back when I tried to twist the upper part of the chest. And what that means is that if you move it and it moves itself back, you're not actually rotating whatever ball peg is in there, you're deforming the peg. So watch out. If you see that happen, stop what you're doing, heat him up, and loosen him up a little bit. But you do get some extra range out of this. So not only is it a swivel point, it does afford some extra side to side and a little bit more forward and backward. You still have your ball peg down there though. So he does go forward and backward really good as a result. And your tilt side to side is probably even better. You also, of course, still have your waist rotation down there. But just watch out for that. You don't want to shear that peg off for sure. Legs go out. They, of course, are going to kick forward. They kick backward. You've got your thigh twist up there. We've got our single jointed swiveling knees, but this guy is different in that he does have some of that new construction. So he has a knee piece, which allows for boot swivel. So you got boot swivel down there. And that is, it's not new, but it's not old either. You've got rotation at the top of the ankle. You still got really good rocker. And then we've got our hinge down there. He does also have a tail. And this, of course, pegs into that hole on the back. And then you've got a little bit of swivel back here just to sort of shimmy that thing around and twist it however you want. It basically just rotates, but it does afford you some posability. So this guy is, he's no more or less articulated than any new figure at this point, especially if you're into Cosmic, but he does have all of that new range that we've been seeing for the past, year plus at this point. And he does feature some slight changes that we've started to see recently with other figures with the diaphragm cut. And then, of course, with the extra part at the knee between the kneecap and the shin. Now, unsurprisingly, I suppose, my main interest for this guy truly lies with how he looks. I really think that's where he provides the most value because, he does move well. He does feature, I guess, our current standard for what we should expect to see going forward for Legions across a lot of these new parts. But this guy, in the context of Legions in general, the line as it stands now, is very, very unique. He is a color that we don't have a lot of, so that's a big thing. It's obviously, I like orange. It's not even, it's not even one of those things where it's just because I like orange. I do like orange, obviously, but this guy is one of the very few examples of this color in the line. There's a lot of greens, there's a lot of blues, there's a lot of reds, there's of course a lot of metallic colors in this line, but we don't have some of the primary colors really, really showcased heavily just because, they're not that common. So this is a great way to get an orange figure on the shelf. And of course, it's a little on the nose. His name is Koi, so of course he's a koi fish. It makes perfect sense, although I won't say that I really thought of that at first glance. It makes sense in hindsight, but I really love the mix of parts here. He does have a few little oddities about him that I find kind of weird for just the build. I guess it's really only one thing, and I'll get that out of the way. It is, of course, the knees down here, the knight knees versus the more wooden style of armor that he has. So this armor is from the Thraxian Scout, so is this. And then these are just, newer knight knees that are being used when we have this, bootcut style articulation. So this armor features that possibility, so they did something kind of odd and swapped that in instead of the actual piece of armor that goes with this particular shin guard down there. I won't say that I would have ever thought that that was going to happen. I guess it makes perfect sense that it happened, but it does look out of place to me. The more that I look at it, it's kind of a non-issue, but it was one of the things that really stuck out at me at first. Just kind of a your mileage may vary kind of thing. I think it's an interesting choice. I don't know if it adds or detracts for me in particular. I'm really focused on just about every other damn thing with this figure. I really love the usage of this armor. On the Thraxian Scout, it's like a craggy, rocky style of armor, but it absolutely works for something very wooden and, very, tribal or villager type of stuff. And that kind of feel comes through with his additional armor pieces as well, which we, of course, will get to. But I think he looks terrific. It very much works for the tribal, villager style idea for the fishmen. Of course, the body style that we've got here works exceptionally well. I love this back piece. Works really well to sell the idea of him being a fish. He's got a tail down here. I do think the tail might be unnecessary for this guy. Like, obviously it works and it's incredibly useful for a fishman, but I don't know if I am going to use it on every single figure. So I kind of like him without it in some instances. But again, that's a personal preference thing. I do love the fact that we have it. I really think the paint is what truly sells this figure beyond, of course, the new parts. So we do have some new pieces with this guy. The feet are new, the hands are new, and what's cool about these, at least on this figure, who knows where we'll see them later on. And if they're not new, someone correct me, but I don't know, I'm pretty sure they are. They're webbed, and they're translucent. So the actual hands are, of course, painted. So you've got the pearly white on the underside, and then you've got the varying shades of orange and yellow and black spotting on the top. But the actual hands are translucent. So like the webbing comes through as translucent and clear. Same for the feet. Same for the tail. The tail is also translucent, but it's this gradient color. And I really can't stress enough, the gradients and the sort of variation in the paint on this guy is really terrific. This thing on the back is also translucent. It's kind of a gummy material, which is kind of weird, but it works really well. And of course, there is there's a pauldrons on and a pauldrons off version. This is, of course, pauldrons off. I do really love the pearly paint on this guy. It's not quite the same as, say, Sir Ignatius. He's like the pristine example of like super, super metallic, pearlescent paint job for your armor. This guy's pretty close. He's maybe along the lines of Sir Ukjak in that way. Similar, I suppose. And then, of course, you've got this big, big contrast with these varying shades of orange, kind of like a deep orange-red. There's a yellowy highlights on this thing, and then a lot of orange, and it couldn't be closer to my shade of orange if they tried. So, of course, that's a big thing for me. I do really like that. And then he does have, of course, a unique head sculpt. It is an interesting head, and I will say one of my, my caveats with this figure is that you can't make a quick and dirty fishman out of the extra head, because it's not an extra head, it's a faceplate. So the back is the head, this front part is a faceplate. That said, it's a beautiful looking head sculpt. The sculpt on its own, terrific. The scale work, all of the line work in the fins and like the whiskers coming off his face look really great. The whiskers and the fins are all translucent, just like the rest of the other parts on the figure. And then you've got the face that's painted in a similar, but it does seem to be slightly less pearly white than the rest of the body. It's not a good or a bad thing, it's just what I'm seeing. And then he's got, varying shades of that sort of deep orange red, orange, yellow, and then of course that white on this very, very unique head sculpt. I'm really happy with the mix of parts here, even down to, you know, the soft goods on this guy. The idea that the Fishman has soft goods does seem kind of weird to me, but it works in the context of Mythos and Mythic Legions. He's got a whole mess of belts and, you know, breeches down there, the whole 9 yards. So he, of course, does have some stuff to cover up the joint work. But I think the green and the brown contrast really nicely against the white and the orange. And again, it's cool to get some translucent parts. It's also cool to get a Fishman, like a full-on Fishman, with this beautiful, beautiful head sculpt. Really can't stress enough. I love the head sculpt. I need to see this again in a different color very soon. Now, as far as accessories goes, I'm kind of going back to how I used to do things, and I waited to put the pauldrons on this guy because I wanted to show him without them. This is one of those, for me anyway, pretty rare instances where I don't think the pauldrons are actually necessary. I think they're really good, and I'm happy that we have them, and they make a really different look for Koi, or whatever you want to use him as a Legion builder maybe. But I think he looks really good and serves kind of a dual purpose when it comes to pauldrons on, pauldrons off. He looks more tame and, you know, just like a villager, fisherman, whatever you want to use him as without the pauldrons on. But this is a different look entirely. Like, it actually makes him look battle ready. It makes him look very much, you know, rough and tumble. But I think he works really well. I think that body in particular works pretty well without the pauldrons in pretty much every case. So I wanted to kind of talk about him that way. I do really like the look we've got here. You know, there's a reason I wanted to get multiple, not just because he's a cool figure, but when I realized what he looked like with all the stuff on, it makes perfect sense to have a couple of them to be, you know, background bruisers or something like that. So we've got an extra face. I did say that this is a face plate. It's not a full head sculpt. So you take the face off right here, Nicolas Cage style. You take the face off, and then you pop this one on, and it's got that mask which matches perfectly. Obviously, this is the idea. Matches the armor perfectly. You've got a different expression now. He's got a bit of a gritted teeth thing going on. So it's not just a one-to-one change with a mask on, with a, you know, helmet or whatever you want to call this. He does have a different expression, and he also has that, which I really like. We've got the pauldrons. These are new. So they're like they look like a woven sort of thing, like a wicker maybe material. I don't really know. They don't look like leather pauldrons. They don't look like metal pauldrons in any way, shape, or form, although they do seem to have some. But these are not the same things that we see on all the warriors and, you know, big beefy heroes that we've had over the years. These are a very different thing. He does have, as I mentioned, multiple back pieces for that slot. So he's got this one here, which allows space for the pauldrons, and then you have the other one that covers the pauldron holes. And then I'm going to take the head sculpt off for this. He does have a collar piece. You don't have to use this, but I think it really beefs him up, and it makes him look a little bit more, I don't know, looks a little bit more armored and just heavy and ready to go. So you've got this sort of collar. It's, again, sort of a wicker, woven, you know, some kind of material, baskety material is what I keep going back to. It does have a little bit of paint on it, some little adornments on the front, but it's not the same color as the pauldrons, and I actually really like that. I think it breaks it up so that he doesn't look like this sea of just brown on the top of him. So I really like the way that looks, but again, you don't have to use that if you don't want to. He does come with some extra hands, and I believe these hands are new because they have a little bit of webbing in them also, and I believe they're translucent as well. So he does have the style posy hands on him in the box. You get 2 sets of gripping hands is all the other hands you get, but they look terrific. I mean, they've still got that pearly paint on the inside, and they've got tons and tons of paint on the outside just for hands. But they are, as best I can tell, webbed and translucent, so you get a set of lateral and a set of vertical hinge. We get a little wine jug. So this comes from the Monkey King. This one's done up in blue. It's like blue with like a bunch of like black marbling all over it is the best way I can describe it. And he does, of course, come with some weapons. So you get one of these swords. I don't know what these kind are called. I believe these are part of like the dwarf set, but I don't know what you would call this kind. It's got a black handle with some bronze and then a deep silver for the blade. But we've seen this about a bajillion times. And then we also get this guy. So this looks like, you know, some sort of, you know, very tribal kind of weapon. This looks like, you know, bone or tusk of some kind, something like that. It's all pitted and worn. It's very reminiscent of the Thraxian Scout's weapon, but it is not the same. And then you get this gnarled sort of piece of wood for the handle. I really like this. I'm a big fan of this thing because it definitely plays up the idea of, you know, fishing village, tribal, that sort of thing. It works really well for our fish dudes here. So they do come with a pretty decent amount of stuff. It's not a million things like I think we see all the time, but you get pretty much, one of every kind of accessory with this guy. And of course, you're able to make two very distinct versions. The only real downside there, again, is that you can't just take the head and plop it on another figure and make a quick and dirty Knight Fishman or something, because, again, it's a faceplate. So yeah, overall, I think it's pretty clear. I'm really happy with this guy. That is the trend with these surprise figures at this point. I really like them. This guy is very much thematically similar to what we got with the Ninian, the same kind of idea in many ways. I love that he can be, a unique character, but he can also easily be made into an army builder or, some sort of legion builder. I think, of course, the color scheme is just top notch. I do really love the paintwork on it, though. The colors, the gradients, the shading, it's all very, very nice. And of course, that pearlescent white really works. I love the new pauldrons. I love this head sculpt with the sort of gritted teeth and the mask over top of him. That's really cool. He moves well, of course, and I think he just looks terrific. There's not enough orange in Mythic Legions as far as I'm concerned, and while we're starting to get there, this guy is absolutely going to pop on your shelf, and there is a very good reason why I came home with multiples of this guy. I mean, he's just amazing in hand. He's a lot of fun. He's very, very different, and again, is a quick little glimpse into this upcoming wave. So that's going to do it for this look at the Mythic Legions Koi. Let me know what you guys think. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and share, and until next time.